Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in today. If we haven't met before, I'm Blitz with the Survival Outpost, and today we're working on urban survival tip number 2, how to acquire food and water in an urban environment, right? This can be complicated because it's not like you're out in the backcountry and you have a reasonable expectation that your water is not going to be contaminated with heavy metals and that your fish is not going to be contaminated as well, right? There's a lot of considerations to keep in mind because the water sources out here and a lot of the wildlife are contaminated simply by the environment that they exist in. Now, when I'm talking about acquiring food and resources, bear in mind, I'm not talking about maybe, I don't know, a hurricane came through and you lost power for a couple days and you're kind of annoyed by this. What I'm talking about is pandemics, full-out war, you know, your city under siege. Look to Sarajevo as a great example of how people survived for a year while that city was under siege. I'm talking about a situation where there's no rule of law and there's no expectation of services being restored in the near future. So obviously, food and water is pretty damn important. It's a survival necessity. So we're gonna get into that today. We're gonna talk about different ways to acquire these resources and precautions that you gotta take. So stay tuned. I think you guys are really gonna like this. So let's start with water. That's a survival necessity, right? You gotta have it. After about 3 days of not having water, you're pretty much gonna have some serious issues. So let's look at see what options we got available to me. I got this big creek back here, which, you know, maybe at first glance it looks all right. It's basically an above ground sewer system, contaminated as all hell. So I'm gonna wanna take some serious precautions when I am getting water out of here if I have to, and purifying that so I can actually drink it and not die. So with this right here, you're not gonna wanna pull out your Sawyer Mini, guys. I hate to tell you, I love the Sawyer Mini water filter. It's a great water filtration system, but honestly, it's just not going to cut it out here. It's not gonna filter out the heavy metals. It's not gonna filter out all the chemicals and the garbage that is located in streams and creeks like this in urban areas. What you're gonna need is a 2-step water filtration process, starting with the good old millbank bag, right? Pretty much any water source I've seen around here, whether it's this retention pond, these creeks, have a lot of debris floating in them, right? So the first move you're gonna wanna make is actually, you're gonna have 2 containers, right? You're gonna have a container that is going to be used to get water out of the source, and you're gonna have another container that's going to collect the water that drips through the millbank bag. And what the millbank bag does, it's basically a sieve, right? To actually, collect all that debris, and the only thing that's going to come out the bottom of this is actual water. Now, once the water comes out, sure, it's free of the debris, that's great, but you're still going to have to filter it, right? Like I said, guys, Sawyer Mini, I love the Sawyer Mini. It works great in the backcountry, used them for years, but it's just not going to cut it out here. You're going to need to up your game and go with something like the Renovo water filter system, which filters out everything, parasites and heavy metals and chemicals, and pretty much covers you 100% when you're dealing with these contaminated water sources. So let's talk about food sources in the urban environment. Obviously, it looks like I got some options back there, right? Geese, ducks, squirrels, they're everywhere in these urban parks and pretty much everywhere, right? I mean, urban sprawl has forced animals to coexist with humans in order to survive, right? So I'm thinking these guys back here could be a viable food source. I don't know. The one thing that concerns me is the fact that they are living, eating, and just dwelling in an environment that is inherently contaminated, right? So I don't know what these things are eating. I don't know. Talk to me, guys. You think this would be a viable food source? Maybe, maybe not. I guess you'd have to try it out and just find out if it works out for you. But all that being said, the urban environment, you might not think of it as being rich with animal life, but it really truly is. And I think if you're smart about it, you can definitely use it, right? Now, when it comes to fish and turtles, like the warning says, don't eat anything out of these creeks, right? Because they're basically, like I said, above ground sewer systems. So you couldn't pay me enough money to drop a line into one of these creeks or a net and try to fish out some turtles or some other creature that's living in here. When I say creature, I mean creature. God only knows. But I would probably opt to go for stocked retention ponds like what we have back here, yes, it's standing water, but it's probably not as contaminated as these water sources right here, which I don't know what's flowing into them, but the public health advisory is pretty obvious that you don't want to mess with that water source too much. So here in Florida, there's tons of retention ponds all over the place, and some of them are actually stocked with fish. So that's probably going to be a viable option for food. So I'm thinking that the urban environment definitely has some good options for food, and we didn't even delve into the urban wooded areas that are more plentiful with deer and rabbit and other creatures. So the one thing to keep in mind here is the fact that animals have had to adapt to living around humans, and a lot of animals that were typically active during the day are now active at night just in order to survive. So that's something to keep in mind if you're ready to, you know, head out into, you know, the city and start hunting, right? So keep that in mind, and above all, guys, keep in mind the fact that this video is just designed as a jumping off point to get you started on your own exploration, your own strategic planning for survival in the area in which you live, because the options that I'm exploring may not work for you. So, you know, don't take this as the freaking gospel. I am not an expert at this. I haven't lived through any sort of survival situations. I'm simply sharing my own advice and my own input and knowledge from living in the cities for many years. So one thing to mention real quick, you guys might be wondering why I didn't break out the Silcock key and go get myself some water from behind McDonald's. It's pretty simple. In a long-term survival situation, grid down, the typical municipal services provided by the local government are going to be out of service. That includes the water, right? So the water supply that you might actually be able to get is going to be limited, I would imagine. So that Silcock key could come in handy in the beginning, but after that, you're gonna have to rely on other water sources like what we talked about. So, hey guys, sometimes finding food in the city is as easy as dropping over here and getting one of Kim's wieners. So I'm about to get some of these hot dogs, and they look pretty good. So,
hey, Nathan,
yeah.
hot dogs.
Nathan hot dogs, but it says Kim's.
That's right, they Nathan's though.
So if you're ever in Jacksonville, drop by, what street is this on? McDuff, yeah, so drop by McDuff and get yourself a hot dog. I'm gonna get myself something to eat right now. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you later.
I'm trying to go to a hot dog convention next year in New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm trying to work on my tips.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how long have you been open out here?
I've been here for about 9 years.
Oh shit, wow, all right, cool, right.
I'm making that.
I'm gonna get a hot sauce on it.
Oh, no,
yeah.
boy.
There we
You a
go.
bad boy.
Oh, yeah.
Put that hot sauce on it.
Oh man, I gotta have some. All right, how much I owe you?
$5. Can you get a
$5.
drink out?